Hello, I'm Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. If you have a question or would like to schedule a session with me, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com. The topic of this video is translating crazy, narcissist and borderline buzzwords and phrases. Have you ever felt like you and your narcissistic or borderline spouse or ex are speaking two different languages? If so, it's probably because you are. To quote Inigo Montoya from the movie The Princess Bride, "You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." Part of my clinical work involves reviewing client emails and texts from their narcissistic and borderline wives, girlfriends, husbands, boyfriends, and exes. Now, over the years, I've identified certain words and phrases that these individuals tend to consistently and emphatically use to manipulate, distort, and create false narratives. It almost seems like these words and phrases hold magical powers for narcissists and borderlines, as if the mere act of uttering or typing them instantly and indisputably proves their point or wins their argument. At first glance, these words are innocuous and non-inflammatory. When read in the context of an abusive relationship with a high conflict and personality disordered individual, they take on new meanings. That being said, please allow me to rephrase Inigo Montoya's meme-worthy words. They keep using that word. I do not think it means what they think it means. And that's a significant part of the problem. These seemingly anodyne buzzwords and phrases, as used by an abusive personality type, well, they typically don't mean what their audience, that would be you or a court evaluator, thinks that they mean. Again, their audience can include spouses, exes, children, other family members, attorneys, custody evaluators, mediators, guardians ad litem, and judges. See the potential problem? When communicating with or trying to mediate a dispute with a narcissist or borderline, it is vitally important to understand what the words they're using mean to them versus how they're defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary. In general, it's best to avoid relationships and dealings with these individuals, but if you must interact with them, for example, you have shared custody of a minor child, always do your best to get it in writing and avoid any and all ambiguity. Leaving things open for interpretation by a narcissist or borderline is generally a mistake, especially if you're in the devaluation or discard stage and or in divorce and custody proceedings. In my experience, these individuals alternate between emotionally charged language or they write as if they're auditioning for LA Law or whatever a current lawyer TV show is. I don't watch network TV. Let's see. There's an odd bit of magical thinking that I've seen many times, which is that once the narcissist or borderline puts something in writing, like for example, in an email that they're sending to you, in their minds, it becomes the de facto truth, no matter how false and far removed from objective reality it is. In other words, Nancy the narcissist or Bob the borderline asserts a lie or distortion in an email with no supporting documentation, and then uses that email as proof of whatever they're trying to prove. It's both bizarre, amusing, and if the wrong people, like the family court apparatus, believe them, frightening. The following are some of the most common buzzwords and phrases I've seen used by narcissists and other abusive personalities in their written and verbal communication with clients. Again, when dealing with these individuals, don't assume that words mean what you and most people with good reading comprehension understand them to mean. Ask that the narcissist or borderline explain what these words mean to them. If they become indignant or enraged by that request, it's likely because you're exposing their linguistic manipulations and games, and they don't like that. Okay, so the first word is reasonable. Each parent shall allow the other parent reasonable phone contact during their custody time. Forgive my use, my emphaticness, but you must define reasonable with these individuals, okay? Because what you or I or your average non-personality disordered person would define as reasonable is very different from what narcissists, borderlines, and other high conflict see as reasonable. These are generally unreasonable people. Like, there is nothing reasonable about them. Therefore, what they believe is reasonable is usually considered unreasonable, again, by most objectively reasonable people. Reasonable is whatever the narcissist or borderline wants at any given moment, no matter how outrageous. And what they frequently want is to continue to be able to control you post-divorce and to control how you parent the kids during your custody time. I've seen written statements in which narcissistic or borderline mothers believe it's reasonable to be able to contact the children whenever they wish, night or day, and expect that calls and texts be answered immediately, regardless of what the dad and kids are doing. For example, having dinner, at the movie theater, in the middle of some other activity, doesn't matter, in the bathtub. I mean, I'm not talking about dad with the kids, but like, dad giving a 4-year-old a bath. You can't leave the kid in the tub unsupervised to go respond to a text message. That is not reasonable. And one client where his ex-wife even proposed to the court that her ex should lose 3 hours of custody each time he doesn't immediately stop whatever he's doing, including driving his car with the kids in it, to answer her incoming calls and text messages. On what universe is that reasonable? And hey, if you think that's reasonable, no, it's not. You have a problem. Just because you can send a text or make a call at any time of day does not mean that the person on the receiving end of it is obligated to stop their life, their job, whatever it is they're doing, and respond to you immediately. Grow the F up. Sorry, pet peeve. And this client who wanted to, deduct 3 hours from his custody time each time he couldn't answer a text message immediately. Well, she also insists that it's reasonable to be informed when the kids travel more than 45 miles from their father's home. That's in state, not out of state. And they live in a pretty rural area. So like even just going to the grocery store is close to 45 miles, okay? That's not just unreasonable, it's nuts. It is nuts. Regularly scheduled access calls at predictable scheduled times are what is reasonable. Okay, next word, immediately. As in, you need to immediately reply to my text if you expect me to trust you. Again, this speaks to their control and abandonment issues, as well as their insistence for immediate gratification. Immediately is a big thing for high conflict personality disordered people. But Daddy, I want an Oompa Loompa now. Again, mature adults can handle, not being responded to for an hour, a few hours, or even a day or two, okay, if it's not an emergency. Believe it or not, before the internet and SMS messaging and all of the other ways we have to immediately reach out and annoy one another, like there was a time before telephone calls where people had to wait for the Pony Express to deliver their message. Okay. This is, Jesus, get a grip. Okay. The next buzz phrase, best interests of the children. You need to reply to my texts and demands immediately because it's in the best interests of the children. Yeah. Best interests of the children, when you use that phrase when used by a narcissistic or borderline or other high conflict parent, yeah, that's usually a smokescreen to justify the toxic or unreasonable demands of that parent. It's not in the best interests of the children to enable either parent's control freakery or abuse of the other parent, or to intrude upon and disrupt their time with the other parent. When we allow that, we allow the children to suffer the effects of parental anxiety caused by their control and abandonment issues. We also teach the kids that it's okay to enable that crap, and it's not okay. And guess what? Fingers crossed, your children develop into functioning, well-adjusted adults, despite having a disordered or whatever the issue is parent. They're also going to have to learn how to have healthy boundaries with that parent. Just ask any number of adult children of narcissists and borderlines. And you can help your kids get a leg up by having healthy boundaries with the other parent. What's at issue here is that the borderline or narcissistic mommy or daddy need to learn how to self-soothe themselves rather than trying to control the other parent or the children to soothe themselves. It also sabotages, these behaviors also sabotage the children's ability to transition to their other home and time with the other parent. Basically, when this is tolerated, the kids are being denied at least one home in which they don't have to walk on eggshells. And don't get me started on the abusive police wellness checks because the non-disordered parent doesn't answer the narcissist or borderline's harassment calls quickly enough. That is such an abuse of law enforcement and taxpayer money. It's horrible. Okay, next buzzword. Communicate. You need to communicate with me if we're going to co-parent. We need to communicate so we're on the same page. What many narcissists and borderlines mean by communicate is that they tell you what they want or expect, and you comply. No questions asked. They whine, complain, or rage at you, and you listen. Wherever, whenever, and for however long they want. There's no negotiation or compromise. There's no disagreeing with them. That's you being mean and controlling and not co-parenting. There's no respectful dialogue. Your wants and needs, for example, not wanting to communicate with them unnecessarily, are irrelevant. Effective communication means you are following orders or are continuing to take their abuse without complaint. And while we're at it, what does on the same page mean? Whose page would that be? If you guessed the narcissists or borderlines page, well done. Next buzzword, co-parent. If you don't start communicating with me, I'm going to tell the judge you're refusing to co-parent. Most narcissists and borderlines are neither capable of nor are they interested in co-parenting, not in the true sense of the word, which is why it's helpful to have them explain to mediators and evaluators what co-parenting means to them. It's usually highly controlling and punitive toward the other parent. That's their idea of co-parenting. This is especially true if the narcissist or borderline has control issues, and I have yet to encounter one that doesn't. Again, this has nothing to do with two-way communication or joint decision-making. Narcissists and borderlines typically make this complaint when an ex is practicing low contact as a part of a parallel parenting approach and exercising healthy personal boundaries with the disordered ex. What the narcissist really means when they accuse an ex of refusing to co-parent is that their ex is refusing to be abused and controlled by them post-divorce, which is like the whole freaking point of divorcing these people, so that you don't have to deal with that anymore. With a comprehensive parallel parenting plan, there is very little need to communicate unless there is an actual medical emergency or an unforeseen logistical complication that affects a kid exchange. And remember, I define an emergency, a kid emergency, as, you can remember it this way, the 3 Bs: blood, broken bones, or brain damage, okay? That's what an emergency is. Not, it's an emergency because you didn't respond to the text message I sent you 90 seconds ago. That is not an emergency. Or I don't know where you are right now with the kids. Not an emergency. You don't co-parent with narcissists, borderlines, and other high conflict individuals. You parallel parent. And if you don't know what that is, ask the Google or do a search on my website. I have several articles about it. Next buzzword: uncomfortable. You're making me feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is another big word for these folks. Look, sometimes people genuinely feel uncomfortable because they're experiencing an awkward moment or someone else is behaving bizarrely or inappropriately. An adult then takes steps to remove him or herself from the uncomfortable situation. If the uncomfortable situation is criminal in nature, we may even report it to the proper authorities. When a narcissist or borderline claims they feel uncomfortable, it usually means someone or something is making them feel uncomfortable about themselves. Perfect timing. To be more accurate, feeling shame for who they are or something cruel or dishonest they've done. Actually, I don't really think they experience shame. They just don't like being called out on their nonsense. And that makes them uncomfortable. For example, a narcissist is being held accountable, or the borderline's outrageous behavior is being exposed. That's what makes them uncomfortable. They also frequently feel uncomfortable when they're expected to carry their weight in the relationship or consider another person's needs or feelings. Again, behave in a mutual, respectful, adult way. Yeah, that makes them really uncomfortable, expecting them to behave like mature adults. Next buzzword: trust. I won't trust you until you prove your commitment by marrying me, moving in with me, giving me all your passwords, etc. Oh, really? First, no one, man, woman, or however you identify, should consider marrying anyone that you don't trust. If you're a trustworthy person, it's hurtful to be accused of being untrustworthy. So don't abandon logic, reason, and self-preservation and buy a diamond ring to prove your trustworthiness or give full access to all your communication devices. Please understand, no matter what you do, how much you spend, or how much of your personal freedom you give up to prove your love and trustworthiness, it will never be enough. It's wasted sacrifice. Without trust, it's not a relationship worth having. And if someone is using their alleged lack of trust to manipulate and control you, that's wrong. And let me put this another way. If you really think the man or woman you are in a relationship with is so untrustworthy and on the verge of cheating on you all the time, and whatever horrible things you might accuse that person of being, why, oh why would you want to legally bind yourself to them? Marriage doesn't change anyone. It doesn't change a personality. If you think your boyfriend is untrustworthy before you marry him, saying I do doesn't magically change anything. And again, like, if you are, don't allow yourself to be manipulated into legally binding yourself to someone to prove that you're not whatever it is they're accusing you of being. Instead, ask yourself, why would this person want to marry me and be my spouse and have kids with me if they think I'm such a raging a-hole? That's the better question. Okay. All right. Back to the article here. Okay. Second of all, personality disordered individuals project, meaning they disown their unacceptable feelings, thoughts, and actions and accuse other people of having those thoughts or feelings or whatever the behaviors are that they're accusing you of or projecting onto you. Look, there's no honor amongst skeeves, okay? Narcissists judge others by their own crooked yardstick. If your partner is accusing you of being untrustworthy or cheating and you're not, it may well be that she or he is up to no good. What I tell clients who are in the middle of a divorce is that if their ex is accusing them of like hiding money or affairs or something else that they absolutely have not done, odds are the narcissist or borderline is making a confession with their accusations. The next buzzword is abusive. I won't be abused by you anymore. You're a narcissistic piece of bleep, and you'll no longer control me or the children. Okay. The person who sends that message is writing for an audience, but it's not you. Okay. It's the judge or the custody evaluator. And make no mistake, that's a Lifetime movie network worthy performance. In reality, people who have been victims of abuse want to minimize or eliminate contact with their abusers, not engage in flame wars. If you're not embroiled in a high conflict divorce with a narcissist and they claim you're abusing them, it usually means one of two things. Either you're not letting them have their way, and or you're holding them accountable. That's what abuse is to a narcissist or borderline: being told no and being held accountable for their bad behavior. Narcissists, borderlines, and psychopaths experience accountability and consequences, the natural consequences of their behavior, like touch a hot stove, burn yourself, mug someone, get arrested, go to jail. Yeah, they experience that as being abused. Now, you can try to explain this to them, or you can do something more productive, like reorganizing your sock drawer. This is an argument you can't win with a high conflict person, so just don't engage in it. What's more important, particularly if you're in a divorce or custody dispute, is that you help the people who have the authority in those situations, like judges, evaluators, etc., to understand that what the ex is claiming is abuse is actually just basically a disagreement about parenting, being told no, not getting their way, and that's not abusive. I mean, welcome to adulthood. You're not going to get your way every time. Next buzzword, controlling. You're controlling me. You can't tell me what to do. When a borderline or narcissist accuses you of trying to control them, It usually means you're exercising healthy boundaries and they don't like it. These individuals feel controlled by having limits set upon them, like an expectation that they behave with basic decency or abiding by the same court orders that you follow. That's them being controlled. Okay. The other thing that comes to play or is a factor in this is their off the charts pathological sense of entitlement. These are some of the most entitled people on the planet. They do not believe the rules that the rest of us mere mortals follow apply to them. We're expected to follow the rules and the laws, but they're exempt from all of that. Okay, so having healthy boundaries is not a means of you controlling them. It's about what you will tolerate and let into your life and what you won't. And if they want access, then they abide by the boundaries. If they don't want to, then no access. Okay. Final buzzword: selfish. All you care about is your job, working out at the gym, your family, your kids. You don't care about me. You're so selfish. Ugh, really. These adult toddlers are just so very tiresome. Look, someone who loves you and wants you, they want you to take care of yourself. Mature adults understand that most people need to work for a living. Emotionally stable people aren't threatened by familial and platonic relationships that predate them or post-date them. Narcissists and borderlines are often grossly self-absorbed. I know I sound like a broken record about that, but they are. They often expect 150% of your attention 150% of the time. Anything you do that isn't about or doesn't involve them is perceived as a threat to their control and a potential abandonment trigger. Expecting you to have no life or interests outside of them is unspeakably selfish, breathtakingly selfish. Believing they have a right to control others is selfish. Did you notice the underlying theme of control in all of the buzzwords and phrases I just went through? When we distill the many outrageous, crazy, and crazy-making behaviors of narcissists and borderlines, it comes down to control. Narcissists control to protect their false self, to avoid feeling inferior and insecure. Borderlines control to avoid abandonment. And when they feel abandoned, then they feel inferior and insecure. It's like same thing, just depends on which direction you take it from, okay, with narcissists and borderlines. And really, there's no deeper or more profound reason for any of their behavior. It all boils down to those things, okay, those two things. So if you can identify and understand their verbal manipulation and linguistic game playing and what the words they use really mean, then you can hopefully dismantle your emotional response. Because ultimately, emotional detachment is the pathway to freedom. And the more you detach, the more caterwauling there will initially be. But again, as I like to say, if a narcissist or borderline has a tantrum in the forest and no one's there to hear it, do they make a sound? The answer to that is, who cares if you're not there to hear it? I'm Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. If you have a question or would like to schedule a session with me, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com. Thank you for watching and have a good day.